The cold came down that night like something with weight, not the kind that stings your face and fades, the kind that presses into your chest, makes your lungs work harder just to pull in air. The roads were empty. Most people had the sense to stay inside, but the man was late leaving work, his headlights cutting through the dark as snow began to fall in slow, heavy flakes that didn't melt when they landed. He was thinking about dinner, about the heater in his apartment that always took too long to kick in, about his cat, Milo, probably curled on the back of the couch by now, waiting. He wasn't thinking about stopping, but then the street lamp ahead flickered, and in that brief flash of yellow light, he saw it, a small shape, motionless, right there on the edge of the road, just past the shoulder, where the pavement met frozen grass. He slowed, squinted through the windshield. Probably nothing. A bag, a branch, something the wind had pushed there. He told himself to keep going, but something about the stillness, the way it didn't shift even as snow began to settle over it, made him pull over. The engine ticked as he stepped out into the cold, his breath clouding in front of him. He walked closer, crouched down, and his heart dropped. At first he thought it was a kitten. The size was right. The fur, matted and damp, clung to a tiny frame that couldn't have weighed more than a pound. But then he saw the markings. Dark spots across pale fur, ear tufts, small but unmistakable, paws that were too wide, claws barely visible, but hooked and sharp. This wasn't a stray. This was a bobcat. A kitten, yes, but wild, and it wasn't moving. He touched it. The body was cold, stiff almost. For a moment he thought he was too late, but then he felt it, a faint flutter beneath the ribs. Shallow, fragile, barely there. The kitten's eyes were closed, its mouth slightly open, as if it had been crying, and simply stopped. Hypothermia, maybe worse. He didn't think. He pulled off his coat, wrapped the small body inside, and ran back to his truck. The drive home was a blur, one hand on the wheel, the other pressed against the bundle in his lap, trying to will warmth back into it. He kept glancing down, checking for movement, for breath, for anything. The bobcat didn't stir, didn't cry, just lay there, limp and cold, as the heater roared and the snow thickened on the windshield. He drove faster than he should have, took a turn too sharp, didn't care. All he could think was, don't let this be for nothing. When he finally got inside, he moved with the kind of frantic precision that comes from desperation. He grabbed towels from the bathroom, heating pads from the closet, a cardboard box he turned into a makeshift nest. He laid the bobcat down gently, wrapped it in layers, adjusted the heating pad to low so it wouldn't burn. Then he sat on the floor beside it, watching, waiting, terrified that the small chest would stop rising altogether. Minutes passed, then an hour. He dampened a cloth with warm water and pressed it gently to the kitten's paws, trying to coax circulation back into the tiny limbs. He whispered to it, though he didn't know why, maybe just to fill the silence, maybe because it felt wrong to let something die alone. Come on, he said softly, just hold on, just one night, that's all, one night, and I'll get you somewhere safe. It was past midnight when he saw the first real sign of life. A twitch in the kitten's hind leg, a faint shiver that rippled through the small body. Then slowly, the eyes cracked open, not fully, just slits, cloudy and unfocused, but open. The man exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The bobcat blinked once, twice, then closed its eyes again, but it was breathing stronger now, steadier. He sat back against the wall, exhausted, his hands still trembling from adrenaline. Okay, he whispered, okay. You're okay. He didn't know if that was true, didn't know if the bobcat would make it through the night, but for now, it was enough. He told himself he'd call a wildlife center in the morning, someone who knew what they were doing, someone who could take over. This was temporary, one night, that was the plan. But then he heard it, a soft sound from the hallway. He turned his head and saw Milo standing in the doorway, his orange tabby fur catching the dim light from the lamp. Milo had always been cautious, skittish, even, the kind of cat who bolted when strangers knocked on the door, who hid under the bed during thunderstorms. The man had adopted him 3 years ago from a shelter, and even now Milo still startled easily, still took time to trust. So when Milo stepped forward, not away, but toward the box, the man froze. Milo, no, he said quietly, reaching out as if to stop him, but Milo didn't flinch, didn't hiss. He just moved closer, low to the ground, his whiskers twitching as he sniffed the air. The man watched, heart pounding, unsure what would happen. Milo reached the edge of the box, looked down at the bobcat, paused, and then slowly, deliberately, Milo leaned in and began to groom the bobcat's frozen ears. His rough tongue moved in careful strokes, over and over, as if he'd done this 100 times before. The bobcat didn't move, didn't flinch, just lay there, breathing, as Milo cleaned the dampness from its fur, warmed the small face with his own body heat. The man sat in stunned silence. He didn't understand what he was watching. Milo had never done this before, never shown interest in anything wild, anything unfamiliar, and yet here he was, grooming a predator that should have terrified him, tending to it like it was his own. The man's throat tightened. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just watched, as Milo curled himself around the bobcat, tucking the tiny body against his chest, purring low and steady. Outside, the wind howled, the snow kept falling, but inside, in that quiet room lit by a single lamp, something unexpected was beginning. The man didn't have words for it yet, didn't know what it meant, or where it would lead. He only knew this: the night wasn't over, and somehow he understood, neither was this story. Morning light came pale and cold through the window. The man woke stiff on the floor, his neck aching from the angle he'd slept at. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then he heard it, a soft rhythmic purring. He turned his head. Milo was curled tight around the bobcat, his body wrapped protectively over the smaller form. The bobcat's chest rose and fell with stronger breaths now. Its tiny paws twitched as it stretched, claws flexing instinctively. The man sat up slowly, careful not to startle them. The bobcat's eyes opened, clearer now, pale gold and sharp, and locked onto him for just a moment, before closing again. He reached for his phone, started searching for wildlife rehabilitation centers, made a list of numbers to call, but every time he glanced back at the box, he hesitated. Milo hadn't moved, hadn't left the bobcat's side all night. Over the next few days, something shifted. The bobcat grew stronger, started eating the softened food he offered, tiny bites at first, then more eagerly. Its legs steadied, its movements became more deliberate, and Milo became something the man had never seen before. A guardian, a teacher. He brought his toys to the box, dropping them gently near the bobcat's head. When the bobcat cried, high-pitched mews that sounded almost like a house cat's, Milo meowed back, loud and insistent, until the man came to check. During naps, Milo curled around the bobcat, like a living blanket, his purr a constant soothing hum. The man tried to separate them once, just for safety. He moved the box to another room, closed the door. Within minutes, Milo was crying at the barrier, pawing frantically at the gap beneath. The bobcat answered from the other side, distressed and sharp. The man lasted 5 minutes before opening the door. Milo shot through, went straight to the box, and didn't leave again. By the end of the week, the bobcat was climbing out of the box on its own, testing the room, pouncing on shadows with surprising precision. Milo taught it the language of house cats, slow blinks, head bumps, gentle play biting. But the wild was there too. The bobcat scaled the curtains in seconds, perched on the bookshelf, watched the world outside, with an intensity Milo never had. The man watched them play one evening, Milo on his back, batting softly at the bobcat's face. The bobcat, wrestling back, careful but strong, and the man felt it settle in his chest, quiet and undeniable. This wasn't temporary anymore. He didn't know when it had changed. Maybe that first night, when Milo groomed frozen ears. Maybe just now watching them curl together on the couch, as if they'd always been brothers. He didn't call the wildlife center that day, or the next. He told himself he would. Soon, just not yet. Because something beautiful was unfolding here, something he didn't fully understand, and for now, he couldn't bring himself to end it. 3 weeks passed, then 4, and the bobcat changed fast. Its legs lengthened, muscles filling out beneath spotted fur. Its paws grew wide and powerful. What had been gentle play with Milo became something harder to ignore. The bobcat pounced with real force now, pinned Milo down with weight that made the older cat grunt. But Milo never hissed, never ran,
He just slow blinked and came back for more, like he understood something the man was only beginning to see.
The man finally made the call. The woman on the phone was kind but direct. If he's healthy and gaining strength, it's time to start the transition. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. For all of you. She gave him instructions. Contacts. A timeline. When he hung up, his hand was shaking. That night, he watched them together on the couch. The bobcat sprawled across Milo's back, grooming his ears the way Milo had once groomed his. Milo purred, eyes half closed, content. The man felt something break in his chest. How do you explain to a cat that his brother has to leave? He built the enclosure himself. A larger space in the backyard with platforms, climbing logs, sheltered corners. The bobcat explored it immediately, fearless and curious. It stalked insects through the grass, leaped to the highest perch, scanned the air with nostrils flared. Every movement was sharp, precise, utterly wild, but every evening, as the light faded, the bobcat pressed against the glass door, staring inside, watching for Milo, and Milo would come to the other side, sit inches away with only glass between them, and cry, soft at first, then louder. A sound the man had never heard from him before, raw and pleading. The man stood in the kitchen one night, listening to Milo's cries, watching the bobcat's silhouette against the door. The wildlife coordinator's words echoed in his mind. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. But which choice was harder? Releasing the bobcat into a world it was born for, or breaking the bond that had saved its life? The bobcat was stronger now, confident, ready. Spring was coming, the air warming, the forest waking. Everything said it was time. But when the man looked at Milo, still crying at the glass, still refusing to leave his post, he wondered if doing the right thing always had to hurt this much. Spring arrived, soft and green. The man made the final call. The wildlife staff came with transport crates, and paperwork, and calm, practiced voices. They examined the bobcat, checked its weight, its reflexes, its teeth. Healthy, they said. Strong, he's ready. The man and Milo walked the enclosure one last time. The bobcat moved between them, brushing against their legs, purring in that deep, rumbling way that wasn't quite like a house cat's. Milo groomed its ears. The bobcat nuzzled back. Then the staff opened the gate. The bobcat didn't bolt. It walked forward slowly, paused at the threshold, and looked back. Just once. Then it turned and disappeared into the trees. Spotted coat, melting into shadow, and new leaves. The man stood there long after it was gone. Milo pressed against his ankles, silent. The house felt wrong after that. Too quiet, too still. Milo wandered the rooms crying softly, checking the box that was no longer there, sitting at the glass door that led nowhere now. He stopped eating as much, stopped playing, just sat on the porch every evening, staring at the tree line, waiting. A man wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake, if love should have mattered more than instinct, if keeping them together would have been kinder than this grief. 3 weeks passed, then one morning, he checked the trail camera he'd mounted near the woods. He scrolled through images of deer, raccoons, a fox, then he stopped. His breath caught, there at the edge of the frame, the bobcat, bigger now, coat, glossy, and full, ears alert, healthy, thriving. It stood just beyond the tree line, facing the house. The timestamp read 6:47 p.m., right when Milo always went to the porch. The man scrolled to the next image. The bobcat was still there, and then he noticed the audio file. He pressed play, static, wind, and then 2 soft meows, clear and deliberate, answering something the camera hadn't picked up, answering Milo. That evening, the man opened the door. Milo walked onto the porch, ears forward, and there just at the edge of the yard, where grass met wild ground, the bobcat stepped into view. It didn't approach fully, didn't come close, but it came close enough. Milo moved forward. The bobcat lowered its head. They touched noses, brief, gentle, the way they had 100 times before. Then the bobcat stepped back, turned, and slipped into the forest. Milo didn't cry, didn't follow. He just sat on the porch, watching the place where the bobcat had been, ears still forward, tail wrapped around his paws. The man sat beside him. Neither of them moved for a long time. The bobcat stayed only one night, but he left a bond that would last a lifetime.